Urgent Atlanta Falcons fans. Do not miss this. What just happened? You won't believe this one. But before we reveal the big news, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because here, we bring you daily videos with the latest Atlanta Falcons updates. And to not miss anything, activate the notifications. Alright, folks, today we've got some pretty spicy news, some rumors swirling around that could shake up the Falcons' linebacker core and, honestly, the entire defensive setup for the upcoming season. Now, I know what you're thinking, what could possibly be happening right now that's so significant? Well, it involves a name that's been quite controversial recently, Devondre Campbell. That's right, the veteran linebacker, who had an up-and-down stint with the San Francisco 49ers last year, and who many fans might remember for that infamous moment late last season when it seemed like he literally quit on his team during a game. Yeah, the same guy. But here's where it gets interesting for Falcons fans. Despite all the drama and questions about his character and consistency, there's talk that Atlanta might actually be a potential landing spot for Campbell. Now, before we dive deep into the what and why, let's set the stage here. Devondre Campbell, a once first-team All-Pro linebacker, has had a pretty turbulent NFL journey lately. After spending years with Green Bay, where he made a name for himself as a solid, reliable linebacker, he moved to the 49ers last year as a stopgap option. And honestly, things didn't go quite as planned. His time in San Francisco was marred by controversy, especially with that infamous game late last season when, in a moment of apparent frustration or maybe just exhaustion, he opted to leave his position on the field, leaving his team short-handed at a critical moment. That incident, combined with some public comments from his former teammates about his attitude and professionalism, have cast a long shadow over his free agent status. And here's the kicker, despite his past issues, Campbell remains unsigned. And it's not just because teams are wary of his character, but also because of his recent performances and the perception of his on-field reliability. The NFL, as you well know, is a league where talent is critical, but character and consistency matter just as much, especially in high-stakes situations. Now, Campbell, who is about to turn 32, has publicly stated that he's not desperate for a new contract, that money isn't the driving factor anymore, and that he's more interested in the right fit and the opportunity to compete. But let's be honest, in the NFL, sometimes desperation or opportunity can come in unexpected ways, and that's where the Atlanta Falcons might come into play. Fansided's NFL analyst John Bueller recently floated the idea that the Falcons could be a dark horse candidate to sign Campbell. Now, I want to clarify, no official sources or leaks here, just pure speculation and analysis, but it's an interesting scenario to consider. The Falcons, after a disappointing defensive campaign last year, have been actively looking to reshape their defense during the offseason. They've already made some moves, like bringing in Leonard Floyd, the edge rusher formerly with the 49ers, to bolster their pass rush. They're clearly trying to add veteran leadership and versatility to their front seven. So, the idea that Atlanta might take a chance on someone like Campbell isn't completely outlandish. Think about it, the Falcons have a history of giving second chances, especially to players with talent who maybe have some baggage or character questions. Remember when they signed players like Todd Gurley or even earlier in their history, giving opportunities to talented but controversial figures? It's part of their culture to see potential where others might see risk. And Campbell, with his experience and talent, especially in pass coverage, could fit into that mold if the price is right and if he's willing to accept a role that isn't necessarily a starring role but more of a rotational or situational linebacker. It's worth noting that the Falcons, like many teams, are looking for that veteran presence to help stabilize their defense, especially considering how inconsistent last season was. However, there's a big caveat here. Campbell's recent history, especially that game where he seemingly quit, and the public comments from his former teammates, make him a risky proposition. The Falcons are a team that prides itself on building a strong, disciplined culture, and signing someone with a controversial exit like that could be viewed as a gamble. But then again, the NFL is a league built on taking chances. Sometimes, a player's talent and leadership potential outweigh character concerns, if the player is willing to adapt and prove himself. Now, what about his on-field abilities? Well, Campbell has always been a versatile linebacker. He's capable of covering tight ends and running backs in pass coverage, which is increasingly important in today's NFL where offenses are so dynamic and pass-heavy. He's also a solid run defender, although recent performances have shown he's not quite at the elite level he once was. Still, with the right coaching and scheme, he could be a valuable asset, especially as a veteran leader in the locker room. The Falcons have been trying to rebuild their defense from the ground up, emphasizing speed, versatility, and leadership, qualities that Campbell could bring if he's motivated and willing to accept a reduced role. Now, imagine the scenario: Week 7, the Falcons hosting the 49ers, Campbell's former team. That game would be electric. It would be a reunion of sorts, a storyline that writes itself. Campbell going up against his old team, perhaps trying to prove that he still has what it takes to compete at a high level. For Atlanta, it would be a chance to make a statement, to show that they're willing to take calculated risks to improve their defense and that they're not afraid to bring in veteran talent to fill gaps. Of course, it's essential to consider the risks involved. Campbell's history of controversy, his recent performances, and the fact that the Falcons are trying to build a disciplined, cohesive unit mean they would need to carefully evaluate whether signing him is worth the potential fallout. The front office and coaching staff would have to weigh whether his talent outweighs the baggage, and whether he's truly committed to contributing positively to the team culture. It's a delicate balancing act, but one that could pay off if managed correctly. So, what's the overall outlook? Well, if the Falcons do decide to pursue Campbell, it could be one of those under-the-radar moves that either backfires or becomes a hidden gem. The NFL is unpredictable, and sometimes, the right veteran can make all the difference in tight playoff races. Atlanta's defense needs all the help it can get, and if Campbell can bring leadership and a solid football IQ, he might just be the piece that helps the Falcons turn the corner. Now, let's talk about the current state of the Falcons roster and what they've been doing this offseason to get better. Last year, Atlanta's defense was one of the worst in the league. They struggled against the run, allowing over 130 yards per game, and their pass defense was inconsistent. Part of that was injuries, part of it was scheme, and part of it was simply a lack of talent and experience at key positions. So, during the offseason, they've made some bold moves, including trading for defensive players, drafting young talent, and bringing in veteran free agents to fill specific needs. And it's not just about adding talent, it's about creating a culture of accountability and discipline. The Falcons front office knows that defense wins championships, and they're doing everything they can to finally turn their defensive unit into a strength instead of a weakness. Bringing in a veteran like Leonard Floyd was a smart move, as he brings pass rushing ability and leadership. But they're also looking to add more experience and stability at linebacker, which is where someone like Campbell could come into play if they decide to roll the dice. Now, it's worth talking a bit about the linebacker position in Atlanta. The Falcons have some promising young players, like Troy Anderson, who showed flashes last season, and Michael Walker, who's been a steady presence. But they lack that proven veteran who can anchor the middle and provide leadership. That's precisely why Campbell could be a fit, if he's willing to accept a role that's more about mentorship and situational play rather than being a full-time starter. Atlanta's defense is still a work in progress, and adding a veteran with Campbell's experience could help accelerate their development, especially if they're aiming for a playoff push. So, looking ahead, what can we expect? Well, the NFL offseason is always filled with surprises, and the Falcons are certainly not shying away from making bold moves. They're in a position where they want to compete now, not just rebuild for the future. If they see value in Campbell's skill set and believe they can manage the potential risks, we might see him in a Falcons uniform before the season kicks off. And if that happens, it will definitely be a storyline to follow, especially when the Falcons face the 49ers in Week 7, a game that could become a highlight of the season, with Campbell returning to face his old team. Before we wrap it up, I want to emphasize that this is all speculation for now, but it's rooted in the realities of NFL roster building. The Falcons are always looking for ways to improve, and sometimes that means taking chances on players with complicated pasts. The key for them will be assessing whether Campbell's talent and leadership qualities outweigh the potential fallout and whether they can incorporate him into their team culture seamlessly. And now, Atlanta Falcons fans, I want to hear from you. What's your take on this whole situation? Do you think signing Campbell would be a smart move or too risky? Would you welcome him into the locker room, or do you think his past controversies are too much to overlook? Drop your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Your voice matters so much to us and to the Falcons. And don't forget, I'll be back soon with more updates, analysis, and news on everything Atlanta Falcons, so stay tuned and keep supporting your team. The season is approaching fast, and there's plenty more to discuss, debate, and get excited about. Thanks for watching, and as always, go Falcons!